Good morning, Revolution, everybody, and welcome to our stream. Today we stream on Twitch, we stream on X, and we stream on Facebook. We hope everybody joins us. And don't just join us, share it with your friends, share it with your network, spread the wealth. Good morning, Anita. Good morning, Kay. Good morning, Scott, with the new haircut. Very happy to be with you this morning. Our conversation is on the Marxist-Leninist position on the state, the bourgeois state. And when we talk about the state, just to be clear, we're talking about what Marx and Lenin and Engels defined as a dictatorship of capital. We're talking about the government, Congress, the courts, the presidency, and the other departments of the executive, the military, the intelligence agencies, but also the ideological apparatus. And, you know, in this country, public confidence in government is at an all-time low. I mean, it's shocking. You know, you got below 20% for the Congress, below same percentage of Supreme Court, and confidence in the presidency for, I don't know, years has been below 50%. I think for Trump now it's around 42, 43, and dropping. Um, and you know, it's not a big surprise. You know, Congress is divided. The presidency from, well, all of them have lied to us repeatedly, whether it be about weapons of mass destruction or what they're doing in this or that region. The Supreme Court, deeply partisan. Kavanaugh and the others got before the Congress and said that, you know, they were that Roe v. Wade was established law and they wasn't going to touch it. And what did they do when they got in the office? They touched it and changed it and overthrew it, you know, so no big surprise. And the broad working class public wants change, deep change, and they don't care who brings it. We said in our report to the National Committee recently, they didn't care whether it was a black young Democrat named Obama, you know, or a Republican right winger like Trump. But the change didn't come under Obama, and it didn't really come under Trump, nor did it come under Biden, and now Trump got re-elected. Um, and according to some, he is delivering that change. Um, and some say he's carrying out a revolution. Let's start there. Anita, I got a
Yes.
question for you. Is what Trump and Musk and the other Republicans are doing, is it a revolution or is it a counter-revolution in your opinion?
It's, in my opinion, it's a counter-revolution. It is not a revolution. In a revolution, the class that's in charge changes from before the revolution to after the revolution. Like when the aristocracy was overthrown by the bourgeoisie, it's a different ruling class. And here you have the ruling class instead really harnessing its power and consolidating its power. And those people who have been hoarding money and resources for themselves as very tiny 1%, or even the 5 individuals who are the richest people in the world. Really, they're consolidating their power. They're not changing. They're not giving anything up. And in terms of the working class, it's just going to be more and more hurt by the recent developments, the firings that have taken place, the union busting that's going on. It's really an anti-working class administration right now, and getting worse. So it's certainly not a revolution, in my opinion.
Kay, is Anita right? Do you have to have a change in relationships of classes? I mean, take the Civil War. You We see that as a revolutionary fight against a Southern Confederate revolt. So, given that definition, MAGA, Trump, Doge, revolution or counter-revolution?
I count it counter-revolution. It's pretty clear to me. Well, even if you look at their rhetoric, right? They see a bunch of black people in a room in leadership over some part of the government or over some part of the corporation or even their own companies, or their own communities. And they say, oh, look, it's a DEI revolution, right? We can't deal with this. They're trying to make white people go extinct or some nonsense like that. Um, and then they get a whole bunch of billionaires in the room, right? And they say, all the rich people are welcome. We're going to do tax cuts for the rich, is in parentheses. They don't say that part on the script. But uh, me, as a person who's not a billionaire, I see that and I'm like, well, are we going to call a spade a spade? Like, these people have their own networks of communication, they have their own media. You look at who owns the news outlets uh, in different countries and across different forms of media like TV or radio or newspaper, online, social media, and is billionaires pretty much. So like, they take over the government and, it sounds like a counter revolution to me. Quacks like a duck, looks like a duck. What is it?
It's a duck. It is a duck. Scott, do you agree with Anita and Kay that it has to be a change in the relationships of class power? But that don't explain what happened in the Civil War when you had a revolutionary fight against the slavocracy. What do you think?
So we have to think about revolution in a very broad sense. First of all, there's democratic revolution, which occurs throughout the entire process of capitalism. And that culminates, in fact, in socialist revolution, where you have a complete shift in class power from the capitalist class to the working class. But I would say that the revolution represented by the Civil War and Reconstruction was not a complete shift in what class controls the state, but definitely a change in how the ruling class was able to exercise its power. When you eliminated the slavocracy and when you enfranchised, when people won their freedom and won democratic rights, that was a massive limitation on the power of the ruling class. It opened new possibilities for workers and oppressed people to struggle for change within that system. And ever since that time, the ruling class has been trying to scale that back, claw back what it lost, right? In this process of struggle that goes on. And yes, it's a counter revolution right now. It's an intensification of all. No, so none of this stuff is new, right? The brutalization of migrants, the crackdown, the suppression of free speech, um, the attempt to cut public services and crack down on federal workers and their unions, all of that is part of long-standing right-wing policy that has been, tumbling around in one form or another for a long time. This is just an intensification of it. That's not to say it's not dangerous. It's extremely dangerous, right? We talk about in dialectics. When a quantitative change becomes a qualitative one, when those right wing reactionary policies and forces um, intensify to a certain point, you get a qualitative shift in the kind of governance that you have toward fascism, and that's what they're going for. This is a counter revolution. It's absolutely reactionary.
Absolutely reactionary, Anita,
Mhm.
according to Scott and according to Kay and according to yourself. So I imagine then, Anita, you know, you would have been out there with the Democratic Party defending USAID, which has been defined by a number of progressive people as an instrument of soft US imperialist power, that it goes around the world and helps promote US imperialist ideas and ideals, both politically and ideologically, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people on the left were like, "Why would you go out there and defend that?" So Anita, I saw you with your sign. You know, I defend USAID. What's up with that? Please tell me.
Well, yeah, I think I mean USAID is a was a complex institution. I guess it still exists. I think it's just in paper anyway. It did provide a lot of ways that the United States could impose its imperialist designs on various parts of the world. It also did some things that were like groundbreaking health initiatives like the anti-AIDS efforts that were started under the Bush administration and carried on. I think there is a lot of, food aid and a lot of things like that that they gave up with stopping USAID. I heard the Milliford, whatever his name is, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, the head of the International Relief Agency. And they're in really dire straits in various parts of the world. And really, people are going to die because of those, the drawback in programs. And yes, USAID had some very nefarious tasks and has done some awful things in the past. But it was targeted not because it was doing those things. It was targeted because it was low hanging fruit and something that Elon Musk and his Doge boys could attack without any political blowback for the president. So they really took advantage of people. They're causing death and suffering around the world for political gain. It's reprehensible, and the institutions like USAID are complex, and sometimes they reflect the real the best interests of the people of the United States. We pool our money to help other people sometimes. We do that in a lot of the things that he's dismantling now, like the federal parks department. That's something that we have as a society pooled our resources to take care of these public goods, and that's what he's going after. It's despicable and dangerous, as Scott said.
Okay, Kay. Anita says it's complicated. Let me make it a little bit less complicated. Um, Let me sharpen the question a little bit. Would you have been among those demonstrating to save jobs at the FBI or the CIA or any other intelligence agency that they're cutting back? I mean, tell me.
Well, I wouldn't be out there maybe for personal reasons, but I wouldn't oppose those things outright because here's the thing, right? We Marxists focus on dialectics, right? And one of the fundamental principles of dialectics is that things are in motion. So we can't just judge things based on what they are right now, like what the FBI is to us right now or the CIA is to us right now, but in which direction they're moving. So if I think about what Trump and Musk hope to replace something like the FBI or CIA with, is going to be a lot worse. I am a PhD researcher in computer science, so I have a class that I'm taking right now studying AI. They want to take those tools and make oppression more efficient, right? The FBI and CIA as tools of oppression, they want to gut those, stop the enforcement that those organizations have against companies and corporations to the little degree that they do. Things like white collar crime and other stuff that have to do with legitimate national security concerns. And they want to turn up everything else to 11, the fascist oppression. Uh, and so I think about, well, I don't want that, but I also don't want the FBI and CIA as they are right now. So what am I going to do? I'm going to fight them on the other issues that I actually care about, right? Um, Things like healthcare that they're trying to gut, things like Social Security, things like tax cuts for the rich and tariffs for the rest of us. Um, I don't like those things, and it all comes as a bundle with them, because what appears to be an attack on the FBI and CIA, which I might not want those organizations there as they are today, has a deeper justification, and I don't agree with those justifications. Right? I have different justifications for changing or getting rid of the FBI and CIA. So that would be my answer.
Scott, now, Kay has said, agree with Anita. It's a little bit more complicated, Joe, than you're trying to make out. So he took a lesson from you in shifting the goalposts. But one of the main planks of the MAGA right is to get rid of the deep state, what they call the deep state. And so I have two questions for you. Number one, do you agree with the concept? And if so, should it be dismantled?
I do not believe in the existence of a deep state. There's a state controlled by the capitalist class. And the capitalist class is not a monolith. There are factions within it. And what Trump and Musk and the other MAGA forces mean by dismantling the deep state is getting rid of any institutional resistance to their program, replacing these sort of career folks in the State Department, in the national security apparatus, with people that are directly loyal to them. So getting rid of impediments to their attacks on the people and the working class. That said, I think we have to be careful about the ruling class sets a trap for us in discourse by trying to restrict debate to two alternatives. Either what Trump and Musk are doing or what existed before. And this is especially palpable in talking about foreign policy, where you can the way things get framed is you can either have Trump's America first, or you can have this thing called U.S. leadership of the free world based on USAID and soft power and NATO and alliances and this kind of Cold War concept of democracy versus authoritarianism. We gotta escape all of those kind of false dichotomies. This situation requires of us not just determination, but kind of intense political imagination. We have to think about not just, kind of following on what Kay said, in fact, not just the institutions that exist, but the institutions we need. What would it look like, for example, instead of USAID, where it's sort of kind of billionaires pulling the strings and furthering U.S. interests? What would it look like to really relate to other nations on a basis of solidarity rather than imperialist domination, right? So we have to be looking forward. And I know there's a lot of pressure against that. There's this idea that we're in this extremely defensive position and we got to, retrench and we're not going to be able to make gains. In order to build a resistance at this moment, we have to recognize where the threat comes from, which is the the ruling class, and specifically the most reactionary section of it, and we have to be able to offer, think up, push for alternatives to ruling class power. We have to move towards socialism, um, rise towards socialism or fall to fascism. That's the choice.
Can we advance if we fear to advance toward socialism? So y'all are trying to mess up my arguments by saying there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on here. Anita, I got something that's not a
Uh-oh.
smoke and mirror. You're an advocate of peace, Anita, and in
I
fact,
think
you are
so.
participating in a collective that's going to call for a party peace conference in November. Isn't that true?
That's
Now,
correct.
now, NPR, which is
Mhm.
a good source of information, public radio. My mama used
Mhm.
to listen to it every morning. Uh, on February the 14th, write this down, said that Doge aims to cut 8% of the Pentagon budget.
Mm.
Isn't that a good thing? Wouldn't you support that?
Well, it would on paper, it sounds like a good thing. I'm not going to hold my breath for that to happen. I think our military budget is going to be just skyrocketing because of the kinds of people, the parts of the ruling class, as Scott was saying, that are favored by this administration. Defense contractors are not going to lose any sleep or any money over this Doge situation. And I read somewhere that we're telling European countries they have to spend X percentage of their GDP on military or on defense. And if the Doge promises came true, the United States, might be spending less than that, less than what we ask of others. But I'm sure that that we cannot. We no, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Okay,
I'll bet on
a group called, I think Anita has a point here, a group that calls themselves Responsible Statecraft says what they're doing is just reshuffling the debt. They claim to have cut 0.07% of the budget, the Pentagon's budget, but it's just to offset greater spending in other areas. So they're just moving the money around. What are the other areas? To increase the militarization of the border, to create a Star Wars missile defense, to update the nuclear arsenal, and so on and so forth. And so, uh, don't that tell you that this administration is really not about peace, is it?
Yeah, that's a fact. They're going to war on working people. That's for sure. Uh, my groceries have not gotten any cheaper. My streets do not feel any safer. My future does not feel any more certain in a good way. It's certainly more unsettled, and if they keep on going and nobody stops them, then it will certainly get worse. But there's nothing to look forward to there. I think an illustration that is good to really put this into perspective is, suppose that somebody comes and attacks you, right? As the working class, right? They, punch you or they stick a knife in your side. You know, if they pull the knife out and they just stabbed you, you're probably going to get stabbed again, right? It's not going to be a good thing. If they're taking the budget out from one end, they're probably going to put it into something worse. You shouldn't expect anything good from somebody who just put an attack on you. And I think the point that you were making earlier about class forces having to change or not having to change in a revolutionary situation or counter-revolutionary situation, the capitalists are still in charge. They were in charge in 2016 when Trump took office. They were in charge in 2020 when Biden uh, was running, and they're still in charge now. It's just, where is that knife going to go, and what do we have to do to dodge it and to fight back? What do we have to do to recover? And I think when we're thinking about strategy and tactics as the left and as the broader part of the broader anti-fascist front, we have to think about what retreat actually looks like. Because if you read the classics, like we had Lenin's face up on our promo material and in our intro, attack looks like revolution, like pushing towards socialist revolution, full stop. And retreat didn't look like you just disappear or you evaporate off the face of the earth. It looks like you regroup your forces. You're the working classes building unions. Oppressed peoples are, defending DEI and defending their rights that they have earned in previous battles. It looks like the party building itself up, right? We had that before the National Committee meeting, build the party, build the clubs. That's what retreat looks like. And I think that's what we're dealing with right now, where we're not disappearing off the face of the earth. We're not stepping out of the fight. We are on our back foot, winding up, ready to attack as we gather as many people as we can into organized fashion so we can, really knock this out in 2028.
So we're on our back foot, getting ready to get on our good foot. Okay, isn't that what you're trying to say? In
Yes.
that regard, Scott, I have a more general question for you. When I began, I said that Marxism defines capitalism as the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. Do you agree with that concept, or is it too narrow in your opinion? Uh, and if you do, what is our aim? Is it to replace it or to transform it?
So although there are a lot of very loaded terms in there, so capitalism is a social relation of production. There are forms of power that kind of are rooted in it and uphold it, propagate it. And the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, the dictatorship of the capitalist class, is a useful way of thinking about the capitalist state. And when we say dictatorship of the capitalist class, we have to understand it, I think, is not always necessarily, the capitalists are going to muzzle you and force you into, like, there's room for struggle on the basis of what working people and oppressed people have fought for, right? There's room to organize unions legally. There's room to go on strike without having to fight the cops. There's and fight the private security of the bosses. There's room to run our candidates, right? So those are all possible within this framework of dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. What the dictatorship consists of is taking every other option off the table, right? The dictatorship of the bourgeoisie means that the maintenance of capitalist property relations cannot be questioned, right? There's wiggle room around other things, not around that. We have to replace it with its opposite, which is working class power. If you want to call it the dictatorship of the proletariat, I think if we understand dictatorship in that same way, yes, we need to work for a society where it is no longer possible to reinstate capitalist exploitation and oppression. We need to work for a society where that's off the table entirely, where it's not even something that can be a legitimate part of political conversation. If that's dictatorial, then I'm guilty. So yeah, I find that concept of dictatorship of the bourgeoisie to be a useful one, as long as we don't understand it in too narrow a way that would prevent us from seeing the room that we have to struggle.
So you have a little bit of ability to struggle so long as you don't question property relations. And if you question property relations, the domination of monopoly over the political, economic, ideological life of the country, they do to you what they tried to do to us, which is to push you to the margins of society. You don't get no press. You write a letter to the editor, they ignore it. You hold a press conference, they ignore it. You hold a demonstration, they ignore it. They drive you out of the unions and so on and so forth. And it's only been since the end of the Cold War that has lessened a little bit, but Trump and them are trying to reimpose it. But my question had another part to it. Is our goal to displace it, to dismantle it? Lenin sat in a barn in August of 1917. Anita,
Mhm.
he sat in a barn and he wrote a book pamphlet called "The State and Revolution." And in the State and Revolution, he said we have got to we got to do away with this oppressive. It can't be transformed. It has to be destroyed. Whoa. Today, with MAGA in this counter revolution, and there ain't no doubt in my mind that it's a counter revolution. I agree with you. They are attempting to fine tune the instruments of repression. And nobody is, I mean, I shouldn't say nobody. The big sections of the bourgeois and petty bourgeois middle who are capitulating, rolling over, law firms rolling over, mass media
Universities.
rolling over, university presidents rolling over, you know, and a lot of others are quiet. So the question I'm asking you is, our goal dismantle, or is it still possible through democratic struggle? That, Scott's always talking about the battle for democracy, battle for democracy, democratic revolution. Is it still possible to transform it? Sorry, Scott. I'll come back to you.
Uh, well, I think the immediate question right now is just to stop the fascist takeover of our government. We have to protect what Scott was talking about, this room for dissent and this room for struggle that is being eroded right now I mean, we saw this woman, Ms. Ozturk, being seized off the street for signing her name to an op-ed article opposing Israeli policies. So we see all the time that attack on that area where we can struggle. So that's what I would really concentrate on. I know, am I evading your question? I think that the state will be, I mean, if the state includes things like social security and public libraries and keeping streets safe and setting speed limits and so forth. We need that, and any socialist country would have an administrative arm to take care of those kind of issues. So I think there will still be elements of that we might recognize as state elements, but because it won't have, as Scott said, the number one defense of property relations. It will be a transformed administrative body.
And the fire department, we got to
Thank
include the
you.
fire department in that definition, right? And the Veterans Administration, hospitals are part of that as well. Kay, last word to you. Transform or dismantle? Every revolution that I can think of has created new forms of governance, right? In the Soviet Union, it was the Soviets. And for those of you who think that Soviet is a well, it is a noun, but Soviet means council, people's council, collective. It was a new form of government. Cuba, you had the committees for the defense of the revolution, and so on and so forth. Um, do you think that something like that is going to happen in our country as we fight for this Bill of Rights socialism that we keep talking about?
Uh, yes, yes, I do. And I think the seeds of it exist right now. Uh, and the government has had to try to fight against those organizations. I think of things like the Black Panther Party's breakfast program, where they fed people and they educated them. Um, and that is not something that came out of nowhere. There's a history of people organizing to bring together the communities, whether it's to organize labor, to organize general types of mutual aid to make sure that people are taken care of, children are taken care of, uh, people with different abilities to move around in society as it's set up. Um, so I think I won't evade the question, but I will put it into steps, right? Lenin said that we have to destroy the capitalist state. Why? Because it's a capitalist state. It's not for us. We are not capitalists. We are, people. I'm a person before I'm a capitalist. Is the whole, socialist theoretical position. And so he didn't say it doesn't matter where it comes from as long as the state is destroyed. Because what we're seeing is not really destruction of the capitalist state. It's a vicious reformation. Some things are going under and other things are, coming up from the other side. Uh, but it's not really built to do something different, right? When I think about what happened in COVID with wealth transfer in the country, the rich got a lot richer, and I got a small check. So, if I'm thinking about we're going to grab hold of the state first, right? That's what we're fighting for now. We, the working class and oppressed peoples of this country, have to grab hold of the state, and then we can talk about what we want to do with it. If we're talking about transforming the state or reshaping it, dismantling it, rebuilding it before we have control over it, then it's not really our program. And we're letting somebody else do what they want with it. Somebody else being the capitalist in this case, do whatever the heck they want with it. And, that's not something that I'm going to be standing for. So let's grab it first, and then we can talk about what parts we do like, what parts we don't, and making it work for us.
So, Scott, Kay said grab hold to it. And we grab hold to it by fighting for what we call advanced democracy, or the Portuguese call advanced, what we call anti-monopoly democracy. Uh, so that means transforming the state as it currently exists. It means getting rid of the electoral college, right? It
Yeah,
means fighting for different forms of voting to expand the right of people to vote, same day registration, cumulative voting, proportional representation, those kinds of things. Addressing the problems with the Supreme Court, and whether or not justices should be elected or if they should have jobs for life, or whether or not you need to expand the number, and so on and so forth. And it also means putting into place uh, people's economic democracy. Democracy is not just about voting, is it? And isn't that part of the revolutionary democratic process that you're always talking about? Yes and
exactly.
no. Exactly.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the example of Reconstruction that you brought up earlier. Because what happened there was in the Civil War, there was, like Dr. Du Bois said, a general strike of enslaved workers. They walked off the plantations, they went to the Union Army and said, here we are. How can we help abolish this rotten system of slavery, right? They pressed a demand. They put a task in front of the country. And the strength, the revolutionary character of Reconstruction was based on carrying out that task, figuring out what institutions were necessary to carry out that work, rather than restricting demands to what could be accomplished within already existing institutions, right? So you got new forms of power, you got new forms of state intervention. You had the Freedmen's Bureau, you had the uh, the debates over how to make sure that the slavocracy couldn't retake control of the states that were liberated, right? So I think that's a powerful example for where we are now, right? We can't get stuck in this idea of what's possible within the current forms. We have to define what the task is, which is to defeat fascism, which is to break the power, as you said, of big business and the billionaires, right? The anti-monopoly program. We have to pose that task, and we have to figure out what's necessary to make that a reality, and we have to organize people to build that. So yes, we have to transform the process of taking control of the state necessarily transforms it partially in course, and eventually there will be a wholesale transformation, a complete abolition of the capitalist state and its replacement by a socialist state. And eventually, we say that the state itself is going to wither away. But right now, the challenge is to figure out what forms, what institutions we need to build a movement around actual needs, actual tasks, and proceed toward revolution, as Kay said.
And we continue to uphold, just for the record, that can be done by nonviolent means, that there remains a militant, a struggle-oriented, revolutionary, forceful, but nonviolent path to power. Those paths have not been closed. And one of the things that happened during the Civil War and after the general strike of the slaves is that there was the biggest expropriation of property in the history of the country. Property in human form. Bondsmen were liberated themselves in conjunction with the forces of the Union Army. And I tell you right now, that was big. It was huge. Of course, we'll have to be vigilant because we remember what happened in the Betrayal of Reconstruction, 1877, and Tilden Hayes Compromise, when they took the Union soldiers out of the South and allowed the Ku Kluxes and the plantation owners and the white citizens councils to come back into power. And that is what has happened today. God damn it, with the election of MAGA. You got the Ku Kluxes and the white citizens councils and the neo-Nazis back in power. That's who we're fighting, y'all. Let's not have any illusions about what we're dealing with. Last but not least, we have a mailbag. Y'all got to write to us, ask us questions. And the mailbag is, what are the impacts of Trump's tariffs on workers and people with limited income, which is most of us? Anita?
Yeah, I haven't carried out a study, but I know for a fact that, I mean, that the tariff is an extra sales tax, and sales taxes are regressive taxes. The less money you have in income, the more proportion of that income you're going to spend on sales taxes. And tariffs are a form of sales tax. So the working class and the poor are going to be hit the hardest. When you're Elon Musk, you don't care about an extra percentage of something. They can handle it. They can absorb it. He's just making even more money from the government in his role. So yeah, the workers are really going to be hit hard by these tariffs. It's really frightening.
Scott, Kay?
Yeah, on every front, this is going to be the working class is going to bear the brunt of this in the form of higher prices, in the form of job loss, because when raw materials are imported that small businesses require, when those get more expensive, um, business drops and workers get laid off. The and then this current crash in the stock market is going to, as usual, favorize billionaires who are able to buy assets when they're at their lowest price, and then just profit immeasurably when they go back up. So this is an attack in every way on the working class. And there's an article in the People's World about it that you should take a look at. Uh, and while you're there, you may not know this, you can also donate to the People's World. So consider that as well.
Good point. Very, very, very good point. Kay, okay, it's a regressive tax, but in this globalized economy, we got to figure out a way to bring jobs back home. And I still haven't heard a proposal about how to do that. Do you tax corporations who want to leave? Give them like huge. What do we do? It's a little bit of a dilemma, in my opinion. No.
It is. And actually, this is why we are internationalists in terms of how we think about these issues. If I am a business owner of a $1 billion business or whatever, and I see that labor is cheaper in South Asia than it is in North America, then, why not cut costs and hire South Asian workers? Um, Now, why is it that labor costs less in South Asia? Is it because of what they're making? Or if they're making the same thing, is it because of worse labor conditions? Then, as a worker here in the United States, um, that means that if I want my job to stay here, or at least I want a good job here, jobs will move, right? That's how the world works. Now I'm invested in the fate of all the workers across the world, right? If they have better working conditions, not only do they have better working conditions, right? But then there's less incentive for capitalists to go abroad and say, well, if you're going to demand too much here in the US or in Canada or, wherever, then I'm just going to go somewhere else. They can't go somewhere else. There's nowhere else to go. They have to face the united global working class. Um, and so when we think about the impact of the tariffs on workers, people with limited income, look at what these countries trade that we're putting tariffs on. And because we have a form of government right now where the rich people run away with the money bags, like the Monopoly guy, um, that cost is going to be passed on to you. So without a doubt. So just look at the tariffs plus 30% on this country, all those goods that we get from that country plus 30% or more, right? Because supply chains, all these effects can compound. Um, so think about that when you go to the voting booth for your local government, for your state government, for federal elections. Uh, these are questions you should show up to where these elected officials, the incumbents, and people who are looking to replace them, go and ask them, force them to answer these questions. And then when whoever gets in office, force them to deal with the issue. Organize your communities to do that, because that's what this is. That's what we argue for as communists.
That's what it's all about, y'all. Kay has the last word. Comrades, friends, siblings, tomorrow, April 5th, there are demonstrations taking place all over the country. And so we encourage you to come out. Come one, come all. Grab your signs, grab your children, grab your next door neighbor, grab your coworker, you know, demonstrate against MAGA. We gotta keep the pressure on. Hands off our Social Security, hands off our Medicaid, hands off our Medicare, hands off our voting rights, you know. Uh, Hands off the militarization of the border, and let us open up our eyes and understand what is really taking place, and not believe the MAGA hype. They are those just carrying out a counter-revolution against all of the gains that we have won really since the Civil War, up through the the Depression and the second Reconstruction, through the Civil Rights. They're trying to turn it all the way back, bring a crowd. It's kind of like, I agree with you, Michael. It's like Frank Lumpkin, the steel worker, used to say, always bring a crowd. Until next week, stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Scott. Thank you,
Thank
Kay.
you.
See y'all tomorrow on the
Bye.
front lines of the protest. We'll be there.